Our dreams were made for sharing. Something that I've discovered through the various projects that I've worked on is that when you combine your dreams with those of other people, or even with yourself, really amazing things happen. There's this African proverb which is, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And what I'm looking at in this talk is 3 ways that we can go far by going together, by merging our dreams in different ways. So this first combination is my dream plus your dream. For me, this began when I was at secondary school. So I was at secondary school, it was a great secondary school, and it came around to the time of the school disco. My pocket money at the time was just £2 a month. The ticket for the disco was £3.50. There was an issue here. I got into school early and wrote on the board KFC. My surname is Kepple. KFC stood for Kepple Fund Charity. I said to my friends as they arrived, okay guys, we're gonna crowdfund my ticket here. Who wants to give what? Sam could give 20p. I wrote that down on the board, Sam 20p. And we raised the £3.50 for the ticket. And I mean, I went to the disco was successful, shall we say. This is age 14. And I was like, wow, amazing things happen when you give people a meaningful way to engage and also give them recognition for it. And I mean, this is when I was 14, and I only realized this recently, but it's kind of ironic that 14 years later, I was using the same tactic, but in a philanthropic setting. So some friends and I started something called the Youth Funding Network, which is the idea whereby we get people in a room to say, I can give £10, £15, £20 towards different projects, and we write that up on the board and we crowdfund money that way. So I've always kind of thought, yeah, bring people together around things, and you never know what's gonna happen. When I got to university, this was back in 2001, so I had a loan. And with that loan, it was the most money I'd ever had in my life. And I thought, okay, I'm rich, I can afford to sponsor a child. This is something that my parents had been doing throughout all of my upbringing. And so I started sponsoring Angel Maradiaga, this guy from Honduras. And that was £18 a month. And that was fine for the first 3 months. And then I realized that I just couldn't afford it any further and had to cancel my sponsorship. And that was frustrating and embarrassing. But I think it was through doing that and the stuff that has gone in before in my life, my first thought was, I just need to get my friends involved with this. I could easily get my friends to chip in £1 a month each, and we could sponsor a kid for £1. And maybe it's because that rhymed, but I thought, wait, we should actually do this. So we started Sponsor a Kid for £1 at the University of Birmingham, and we had about 150 students and staff who all started crowd sponsoring children through World Vision. And for me, this was a really good example of taking the sense of, I have a dream here, I want to do something, I can't do it by myself, but instead of just kind of giving up on it, how can I open it up to other people and let them play a meaningful role within it? So fast forward a little bit, one of my friends, she ran the Fair Trade Society at the University of Birmingham, and having done Fame the Musical in my first year at university, I knew loads of people who were singers and dancers. I was studying chemistry, one of my best friends, Rav, and I often had these great ideas of all these parties he wanted to run. Our first idea was at a venue we found called the Medicine Bar. We wanted to organize a party called Antidote. Yeah, it was great. But that didn't really come off. And then the next idea was we went to the university and said, okay, we want to organize a massive student award show. They said, we already organize a massive student award show, why are you here? And so I kind of went downstairs and bumped into Mel, who was saying, we really want to organize a fair trade fashion show in 5 weeks' time, but there's no one to do it. This is her just telling me what was happening. And I thought, okay, I want to organize a massive show. I've just been told I can't do it. So how can I put something together? And my first thought was my phone book. I didn't have any expertise in organizing fair trade fashion shows or fashion for that matter, but I was conscious that I had a great phone book of people who were singers, dancers, and I thought, knowing where fair trade is at the moment at our university, which was very much the domain of the hemp-wearing crew who didn't really wash their hair and had open-toe sandals, nothing against that, but when you combine all three, it's not friendly. So I decided to put together a show that very much took fair trade to the mainstream, which is why we called it Passion for Fashion. And it was about singers and dancers and performers kind of showcasing their own talents, adorned in fair trade clothing. And as a result of this event, sales of fair trade products rocketed at the university, then prompting them to come to me and say, can you make this an annual event? And I just thought, this is really funny. The only reason I'm doing this is because some of your cronies and like colleagues rejected my other idea, and now here we are putting something together. And so again, for me, it was like another example of, in this case, it was Mel had a dream for something, shared it with me, and like we were able to make something really powerful. But the reason why the event was so successful wasn't because of the idea behind it, it was because of the people who were part of it and what they brought to it. And one of my philosophies that I really try and apply is create a canvas, not a painting. So in coming up with this idea for the show, all I knew was it needed to reach people and have a fair trade element. But I really enabled all of the choreographers and designers to bring their own aspects to the event. And I really stress that because when you're opening something up, when you're opening up one of your dreams, you need to shift from, I guess, being in that kind of dictator position, which you're able to be in when it's just you, to one with more of a curator, where it's a case of, I am letting this go, and I'm enabling other people to add their bits to it, but the result is that you create something really colorful. And this whole thing about letting things go really humbled me about 2 years after the first show. So I did the first show, the university would like do the second one, I was like, okay, and then I graduated and passed the baton on to a girl called Harriet, who had, unfortunately for her, stepped into my house one day wearing a nice tartan skirt, and I was like, that's a fly tartan skirt. Are you a fashion student? She was like, yes. I was like, great, you're going to be involved with my next show. And she got involved. And then the following, when I graduated, she said, okay, well, I'm actually up for organizing the show the following year. I by this time, was working in advertising. I went up to Birmingham to see what she had done, and she completely blew my mind. I mean, she actually did the event at the Medicine Bar. It had a better name, she called it P4F, but the event was oversubscribed, there weren't enough bouncers. And the thing that it left me with was, if this is what happens when I share something and then let it go, I need to do that more often, because she took it far beyond where I had ever dreamed it could go. I suppose another example of this is when I left university, I was conscious that I want to kind of like still meet lots of people. So I started this thing called Gradulicious. The idea there was, again, like me having this idea of I want to organize dinner parties for graduates so they can meet other people in London, but I can't just do this alone. So I brought together a crew of my friends, and they became hosts who attended all of the events and brought their friends along, and it kind of grew through this snowballing effect. The reason there's a picture in the bottom corner of me on Dragon's Den is because sometimes when you have a dream, not everybody shares that dream. There are dream snatchers, so you've got to watch out for them. The dragons on Dragon's Den fell into that category. They really weren't supportive of what I was doing, but nevertheless, that was okay. I guess, but taking that point more seriously, a couple of years after that, some friends and I started the Commission for Youth Social Enterprise. This was about encouraging young people to become social entrepreneurs. It got lots of support from people like the Big Lottery Fund, and there was like a big charity partner that came on board. And through hindsight, I realized that sometimes when you're young and to some degree naive, and you're very open to sharing your ideas and sharing your dreams as we were, there's definitely a risk of you being taken for a ride, or other people seeing what you're doing as a threat to them, and therefore kind of undermining some of your efforts. And I guess the one word of warning I want to give is that while I am saying it's really important to share your dreams because you never know what will happen, it's always important to be wary and not enable things to kind of go out of control. So that's the first section of like combinations. The second one is your dream plus your dream. So something that I really try and live by, and I'm rubbish at it, is this whole thing of living your values. I find it quite interesting that to some extent we think of work-life balance as though our lives are very different to our work, and work couldn't possibly be like a meaningful part of our lives. Or on the other side, like we give our money to charity and then we have the rest of our money that we spend on like the products and services that we love. And I suppose I'm always very interested in how can we bring those two together, so just in our everyday spending we're living our values, and in our everyday usage of our time, be it in our careers or jobs, we're living our values as well. And so one of the things that I've kind of just become aware of, and I mean this is just like a snapshot, but there are so many products and services out there that enable us to live our values, be it like eco bags, which like take fire hose and turn it into high-end fashion items worn by Cameron Diaz. And I think I want to leave you with this kind of thought of what more can we do to weave doing good into just our everyday lives. And when it comes to the career side of that, a concept that I find useful and actually quite liberating is this idea of reverse aging, whereby I left university at 22, and so now at the age of 31 on Monday, I think of myself as only 9 years old in terms of my self-directed life. Up until then, it was kind of, the course was plotted for me. And when I think about it that way, it means that, yes, I want my life to have a positive social impact, but it was also important for me to spend like a year or two in the advertising industry, really skilling myself up. And I was quite happy being like chunking my time that way, because I thought, I've got all of these years ahead of me, maybe like 60 plus years. And so I don't need to try and do everything all at once. And I think that's just quite a liberating thought in terms of how do you merge your social ambitions with your personal ambitions? You don't need to do everything all at once when you realize that you've got a bit of a timeline ahead of you. Now, this third area is the one that I get most excited about, which is like your dream, but you're in the corporate sense with their dream, say like beneficiaries. So there are many charities, public sector organizations, which have ambitions for a better world, be it in education or health or getting people to be more philanthropic. But often it's the case that the people who you're dealing with aren't necessarily keen to be involved. One of my clients, an animal welfare organization, they were very conscious that they wanted to broaden awareness of what they were doing. And I said, okay, well, that's cool, but no one knows what animal welfare is. Why don't we steal the idea from the climate change movement and create, instead of your carbon footprint, your paw print, which is a reflection of your lifestyle or the reflection of your lifestyle on animals' lives. And the benefit of this campaign was that it really, for people, it was a case of they didn't really care about animals, but they cared about knowing more about themselves. And so that was one thing that we used to kind of engage people in something that had more of a social benefit. But the one that I'm most proud of is the showcase, whereby this was a project to get kids who dropped out of school and education back into education. But the way that it was done was that they were taken to a course each week where they were told, okay, you need to learn how to use music software and then write a report on how that software works. And then you're going to have a literacy exam at the end. That was boring. When I got there were 4 kids there. There were meant to be 10, and they were really dropping out. And so I convinced the NGO to give me £1,000 budget for each cohort of kids. And I said, what we're going to create is the showcase. And so this group of kids are going to be able to create their own music album and launch event. And then through doing that, they're going to have to write artist bios about the people who are on the album, put together a marketing plan for how they're going to sell the CDs that they make. And as a result of that, boost their literacy and numeracy skills, which are what the charity cares about. As a result of this initiative, the exam results were the highest ever seen on the program. And for me, it's very much a case of, it's because we had the organization's ambitions for a better world, but what they hadn't been doing is looking at the personal ambitions or the personal dreams of the participants. And for them, it's a simple case of giving people something they can be proud of. And I think the more that we can give as NGOs and social enterprises, or even public sector bodies, the more that we can orient our programs to being ones that give people something they can be proud of, making them proud of themselves, the higher participation that we will get. And this kind of like final point of when people don't participate, innovate, is one that I really stand by. So the Sponsor a Kid for a Quid idea, if I'd kind of gone by first results, it wouldn't have taken off and I wouldn't really be here today, because our initial posters were these bad boys on the left, which was just like kind of a simple poster. People saw it and they ignored it. When I spoke with them, people were saying, okay, what I love about the Sponsor a Kid for a Quid idea is that clever simplicity of, okay, you're combining all this money among different students and now it works. And so when we changed our poster to this, a very simple change, that's what prompted the massive growth that we saw in participation. And so often when you're working on new things, it's very easy to get downhearted when stuff doesn't work. But I would always say, iterate with that. My belief is that people are inherently good. And so if people aren't participating in stuff, it's not our role, similar with the fair trade thing, to kind of blast them. It's a case of how can we position what we're doing in a way that enables them to live the lives they want to live and kind of achieve what they think is going to make them proud. And so finally, I guess my point is, share your dreams. When we share our dreams with ourselves, with other people, with an organization and the beneficiaries, amazing things happen. That's what I want to leave you with. Thank you.